Hello and welcome back to A Better World. This is your host, Mitchell J. Rabin, and we're very glad that you're joining us again today. Today we're going to have another very interesting show. We have one of the gentlemen who has been a pioneer in this century, worldwide actually, for his work as an astronaut, being one of the few men who has ever walked on the surface of the moon, Edgar Mitchell, who is also the author of this excellent book, which is available at bookstores virtually everywhere at this point, and going into a second printing, I understand.
Yeah, a little more than that.
Even more than that. And I highly recommend it. I enjoyed it thoroughly and got taken on an adventure into space that went out and in many profound areas. So I want to welcome you very much to the show.
Thank you, Mitchell. Good to be with you.
Good to have you. So first of all, I mean, there are so many questions I could possibly ask you. I really have to start in on something that I know you've been asked many times, but what did it feel like on your feet to be walking and crunching, as it were, the moon?
Well, the main thing is very soft and crunchy because it's the surface is very much like powder, being pulverized years of meteor bombardment, kind of like a dusty road, thousands of miles running over it, like powder.
That's fine, huh?
Yeah, very, very sink into it. Craters.
Yes.
There are, but the very freshest ones are quite soft, and you sink down several inches in those. But otherwise, you only sink in an inch or so at the most.
Now, what is it like now, Edgar, since so many years have passed, and you yet have that deeply embedded in your psyche, that you were there and now you're here and you've spent the past number of years on planet Earth quite solidly. What is it like to go back in your mind and connect?
Well, it's a wonderful memory. It's a wonderful memory. It's a part of a great career that I've had.
Yes.
But it's just a memory.
Yeah.
And we're on to other things.
Exactly. And what are those things primarily?
I came back and began a 25-year study of what is the nature of consciousness.
Absolutely.
The insight from space was that our cosmology, both from our science and our mystical traditions, were incomplete, in some cases archaic, and even flawed. Mm-hmm. And we needed to, as we are now a spacefaring civilization, we need to relook at those deepest questions of who are we, how did we get here, and where we're going.
Absolutely. Now, you founded, or one of the founding members of the Institute for Noetic Sciences, and that was really the foundation, or the forum for the exploration of the next 25 years.
That is exactly right, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What is it that you have found? I'm asking in almost a summary kind of way. What is it, if you could give us a few nuggets of what it is you have found? I know that's completely unfair, but yeah.
The bottom line, I think, and it's not just me, but it's the whole discovery process of science and the whole process of discovering the inner experience from a point of view of science, that we would best describe our universe today as self-organizing, intelligent, learning, trial and error, and evolving, and creative. Mm-hmm. And its sin continues to unfold, and we're a part of that unfoldment.
So even the highest intelligence that we commonly refer to as God or central intelligence or source, these kinds of illusions are to something that you feel is also evolving?
Yes. It seems in the model that I use that the intelligence that we call God is the evolutionary creative intelligence of the universe itself, the mind of the universe, which in the model I use, the idea that the universe not only exists, but we know about it. And both the existence, the formation, the structure of the universe is continuing to evolve to create new stars, new galaxies, new species, undoubtedly.
Yes, indeed.
Throughout. And our knowing about it, obviously, is increasing and evolving also. So we in an evolutionary universe, it not only creates and unfolds itself, but knows ever more about itself in the process.
Now, do you feel then, Edgar, that this knowing that you're referring to is something that is embedded in our consciousness on a genetic level, and we spend our lives unfolding that?
Well, certainly genetics
understanding
has something to do with it, but the most recent discoveries, and I'll use the word the quantum hologram, suggest that it's a continual learning process, even at the level, the genetic level, at the DNA level, at the cellular level. That learning continues to take place.
Yes,
as
indeed.
opposed to simply random mutation and natural adaptation, which has been our dogma in biology and in genetic theory for 100 years, that we're really in a learning universe.
Yes, indeed. But it is not, in your opinion, randomly evolving.
No, not randomly evolving. Trial and error evolving.
Trial and error. Okay, fine.
I mean,
right.
We are a learning species. The other animal species are learning, perhaps not as consciously as we are. But if learning is there at all, and we're a product of the universe, then nature must be described as a learning nature. And the process goes on.
Absolutely. So from looking at this point of view of grand design, which is some idea that is embedded in many of our religions.
Yeah,
right?
the pre-modern traditions, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
How does that notion of a grand design interface with what you're saying?
Well, I don't think the question is, if you have the grand design, whence came the grand design, or whence came the grand designer?
Indeed.
But one can say that's from the point of view of religious or mystical experience. But from the point of view of science, one can also say, whence came the laws of physics? And in the model that I use, these are only the necessity to have the capability to learn and to self-organize is required. The potential for evolving only need be there. The rest of it comes as a result of the process itself.
Okay, so when it comes to, so I can just concretize this a bit, the existence of natural law, the way the hydrologic system operates, for instance, rainfall, ocean, vapors, clouds, rainfall
It's
again.
a process.
This process, is that mutable also through our learning curve, or is this a result of learning?
I think it probably to a certain extent is mutable. However, nature has been habituating itself for 15 billion years, give or take.
A few billion.
A few billion.
Right.
And a 15 billion year habit might be hard to change.
Right.
So if we say...
That would be quite a unique 12-step program.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah. So they're a little hard to change. But presumably, in principle, it's doable. We've seen things that defy our laws of nature as we previously envisioned them, previously codified them. So if that's the case, maybe the laws as we understand them aren't so immutable after all.
Yes, indeed. Are you referring to something like Heisenberg's uncertainty principle?
Well, that is certainly involved, but I'm more referring to the notions of the psychokinetic principles, of the fact that we have the way we think changes and feels, or our attitude influences the health and well-being of our body. And we have seen far more dramatic examples with the folks who really have clear psychokinetic capabilities, which we all have.
Yes, indeed.
But some demonstrate it more dramatically and powerfully than others.
So, sure.
And so if that's true, then the laws as we understood them are certainly not immutable laws.
Absolutely. Now, well, actually from that point of view, you could say that our understanding of the fullest blossoming of those laws
is very incomplete.
Very incomplete,
Exactly.
That's right.
Exactly.
But we're not actually changing the nature of the law, we're exploring further reaches of it.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Since we went down that avenue, Edgar, I have to ask you this. We know when you talk about in your book, which I would like to show to you all again, The Way of the Explorer, which you could almost say is a shamanic journey into space by our latter-day shaman and astronaut, exploring the surface of the moon, both externally and what I'm asking about now is the internal realm. And that is, you discuss here and elsewhere, of course, at this point, and for many years, the parapsychological experiments that you were doing on board ship. Now, did the other astronauts know what you were up to?
Well, not at that time.
Not at that time.
Yeah.
And what happened as a result of those experiments?
They were the classical little experiments that parapsychologists have been doing in laboratories for 30 years or more.
Duke University, etc.
We just demonstrated, and we got positive results, demonstrated that it works just as well off the planet as it does on the planet. And we now understand how that works, so we're right on the verge of completely understanding how it works.
Could you describe that?
Well, it's a new concept of the quantum hologram is what's the information carrier. But the real key to it is the demonstration in quantum physics of the concept called non-locality.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Which the mystics have said for thousands of years the universe is interconnected in some way. And non-locality in particle physics was a demonstration how that is true, even at the subatomic level. The quantum hologram shows how it's true at the macro scale level, the level of our existence. And it provides the non-local information by which these processes work, apparently.
Yes, I see. So it's not only non-local, in a sense, it's also non-temporal, would you say?
Yes.
So all knowledge is simultaneous?
Well, not necessarily, no. Not in the space-time universe. The laws of physics and the speed of light and the propagation of energy is still according to the laws of relativity. But what is apparently happening, is that the quantum hologram resonates with the energy of the zero-point field, which is merely quantum fluctuation. And the ever-present now, the universe, the now moment in the universe is everywhere. That's ubiquitous and simultaneous.
Okay, yes.
So the resonance of an object through the zero-point field apparently is resonating simultaneously throughout the universe. So that sort of information, the resonance would appear to provide simultaneous, instantaneous information. Now, that's a mouthful,
yes,
and there's a lot of demonstration yet to be done to validate that concept. But the theoretical structure shows that's what happens.
Very interesting. You're reminding me that Einstein himself said that time is nature's way of keeping everything from happening at once. So I actually knew the answer to the question.
Actually,
forgot.
Actually, time, of course, is a classical concept.
Yeah.
And it turns out time is a part of knowing, not a part of existence. That is, time is how we measure and know or map reality. But reality is simply process. And yes, processes do occur sequentially, and we attempt to map them or measure them by a concept we call time, which flows in the macro world only toward the future because of irreversibility of process. The most important, Prigogine got the Nobel Prize for this, showing that the most important processes in the universe all go in one direction. They don't go in the other direction. In our everyday examples, of course, breaking an egg, spilling water, putting hot and cold water together, you can't take them apart again, those sorts of things.
Exactly.
All go in only one direction.
That's right.
So time, the arrow of time, the direction of the unfolding evolutionary process is only one way.
Unidirectional.
It's unidirectional.
Right.
Our measurement, though, in our subjective experience is bidirectional. We can go back in memory and project
and imagination
toward the future. And so we can think both ways in time, but nature can't go both ways in time.
Yes, indeed, that's right. We can do it on film,
Yeah.
but we can't. Exactly, not
Right.
in reality, so to speak.
Right.
Right, absolutely. I'd like to dip in for a moment, Edgar, into looking at some of the things, and even from the same point of view, actually, the subject of extraterrestrial life.
Sure.
And life, biological life on
Sure.
other planets, from both your experience of the world at NASA, the United States government, and what your experiences have been over the years, both off this planet and on.
Well,
What is your experience?
Let's just talk about it. Remember where we were at the beginning of the space age 40 years ago, in October of 47.
Yes.
The conventional wisdom, first of all, we hadn't been above 60,000 feet at that point with aircraft.
Mm-hmm.
The conventional wisdom, particularly in the West, was a three-layered universe. God in the heavens, man in the middle, and everything else below.
Right.
Heaven was right out there. And the great astronomer Fred Hoyle pointed out to us that it had been only 500 years since Copernicus had convinced us we weren't the center of the universe, but we still were convinced we were the biological center of the
Correct.
universe. And even when I went to the moon 20 years later, or 25 years ago,
Yes.
we still, both theologically and scientifically, thought we are the biological center of the universe. We're alone. I don't think anyone thinks that.
The geocentric theory lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The biological geocentric
Yes,
theory lives. No one thinks that anymore. The particular model that I evolved in the way of the explorer would be such that life has evolved anywhere and everywhere in the universe in which the planetary conditions, environmental conditions, are conducive for the evolution of life. That it is a ubiquitous process throughout the universe.
So it doesn't stand to reason that planet Earth is the only one with biological life forms.
No, I think that's a ridiculous notion.
Me
now.
too.
Right,
Yes.
right.
Of course, I thought that in 1970 when I first began to
Well,
think.
yeah, so did I. Right.
Yeah.
The point is, the later question though is, have we found each other yet? And that's a more problematic issue.
Yeah.
But the fact.
What is your sense of that? You
Well, I
hear
don't-
about the Greys, for instance. You hear
Yeah.
about interactions. You
I
hear
have
about
no-
Roswell. And,
I have no first-hand experience, and we have none from the space experience at all. And I communicate routinely with the astronauts on this. We have no first-hand experience from our space experience. On the other hand, I have, in recent years, had opportunity to work with and dialogue with many of the people, or not many, some of the people in government,
Yes.
in the military, who go back many years and their official positions, which have been checked out, put them in a position of knowing about UFO, quote, /ET type events over the last 50 years. And they are, at this point, many of them, anxious to tell their story, and they say it's true. And because we can corroborate their presence in the positions that they say they were in, they had a position to know, they claim to have the evidence, and they say that it's now time to tell their story. I tend to believe what they've said, which means it's true. Now, I think it's a bit more involved than simply have they come or not come. I mean, with all the stories we have of all of the so-called abductions, all of the so-called sightings, of thousands of sightings, many of which by very credible people.
Yes, indeed.
The presence of these crazy anomalies like crop circles and animal mutilations and so forth, which seem to go...
Mysterious pregnancies by human women.
Well, I don't know about that one. There's some anomalies here that really go beyond our technological means, and they've got to come from somewhere.
Yeah.
I do happen to consult with a couple of groups that who are seriously in that business. I'm not seriously in that business. But by the way, applying my dyadic model in this book to those types of problems, like the abduction phenomenon and like the mutilation phenomenon.
They are applying the dyadic model?
Well, that's what I've been asked to do, is here are some very intractable, difficult problems. Where does consciousness and physicality come together in these issues?
Sure.
So I
what is their interface?
Yeah, what is that interface? And it seems clear that there is a very major interface here.
Yes.
And I work on that part of it.
Oh, fascinating. Well, please let me know what the results are.
Oh, well, all right.
Really like to know.
The evidence seems to be building that there is validity to the story that we have been visited. Now, I haven't seen smoking gun evidence, and I'd like to see smoking gun evidence. And my informants and the people I worked with assure me that it does exist, but it's in the classified domain and it's hard to get out.
Yes, I hear you. And Roswell, did you see any of the footage from Roswell?
I've seen some footage, and I've seen also many things that are very fake. There's a lot of hoaxes out there. There's a lot of misinformation and disinformation.
Sure.
And I would even go so far as to say that it's very likely that many of the modern UFO events are likely not ET at all. This is homegrown stuff.
I see, right. Yeah.
It seems to be.
What about NASA's latest activity with Cassini, with the Cassini mission and the...
I think it's wonderful.
You do, huh?
Yeah.
And you were not at all concerned
I was not
with...
in the least bit concerned, and I've talked personally. I know some of the people to help design the equipment. I know their concern for safety. And I also know many of the nuclear physicists that have done the analysis. And they are as concerned as anyone else about safety. And there's just the likelihood of any sort of problem with that is just minuscule. It's so small, it's hardly worth concerning yourself about.
Is there anything else about NASA that you feel that we, Americans, taxpayers, citizens ought to know?
Well, there may be things going on that I don't know about at this point, but by and large, NASA has always been a very open, straightforward organization. Most of the stuff we did was never classified above confidential, which just means you don't go handing it out on the street.
Right.
But if there was a serious need to know it, it's not hard to find out what it is.
Sure. Well, there's been, as a result of the Cassini mission, a fair amount of intrigue that got kicked
cranked
up
into
for
it. That's true.
Lots of reasons.
Yeah.
And there are many physicists and others who have come out in very different positions.
Oh, yes, I know they have.
As you know.
But
Alan Cohen resigning and others.
Yeah.
It was quite a major
Most of the
deal.
people that have been deeply involved with the design and with the manufacture and the care and keeping, their concern was for safety. That's the way they built it. And so they don't have concerns.
Yeah. And what do you see now as a spacefaring globe that we are now? What do you see as the next valuable steps for us to be taking?
Well, we must indeed get our act together here. We don't have a sustainable civilization. It's not headed in that direction. We have to create a sustainable civilization in the very near future.
Indeed.
Or we're in deep trouble. And so the space technology can help with that. In that, what better observation platform? How better to monitor burning rainforest and pollutions of not only the streams but the oceans, the fish kills, and so forth. A magnificent technology to do that. We indeed will, in due course, explore the rest of the cosmos, provided we get past the current problem. But solving the current problem is, in my mind, the most immediate issue. And getting civilization, getting humans, to take responsibility for the future of the planet, for the future of civilization, and putting ourselves on a sustainable path. That's number one right now.
Yep, I agree with you. About the Mars work, and especially, I'm sure you know Richard Hoagland and
yes, I know Richard Hoagland.
And okay, does that sum it up?
That sums it up.
Oh, really? What do you feel about the the discussions of the pyramids on Mars and
well,
the
I think
geometries
the
involved in all
McDaniels
that.
report said it all with that. That he did a fine analysis of the Mars stuff, and yes, there are there are geometric regular shapes that are beyond statistical probability. But they're either one of two sources. They're either a crystalline type structure showing at a macro scale level, which we don't see on this planet, but which could be, or they might be unnatural objects. And the only way you're going to find out is go back and look at them.
And check it out.
But the more important thing is that the claims for structures on the moon is just sheer nonsense. It's just not there. And I've examined
on Mars.
No, on the moon.
Oh, on the moon. Okay.
The later claims of
I see.
structures on the moon simply are wrong. They weren't there. I've looked at the photographs. We didn't see them. They weren't reflected in their visors like was claimed. It's just not true.
I see. And what about the face on Mars that's also discussed? What is your thought
I don't have
about
any
that?
comment on it.
Really?
That's all. As far as I can tell, that's a photographic shadow. Unless there's some more evidence than just that. Go back and look at it in detail. You can't tell anything more than what McDaniel said about it.
I see. I'm not coming from a certain point of view with it. I'm just inquiring about what you
I don't
might
think it's worth all the fuss that's been made about it.
But at least according to your dyadic model that you discuss, and let me show the book once more, The Way of the Explorer by Edgar Mitchell, it includes not only the probability, but the great likelihood of there being other life forms elsewhere populating the universe.
Well, as far as Mars is concerned, for example, since its climate was much warmer, it was water long time ago. Did life begin there before it cooled off and dried up? And that would be an important data point.
Sure. But at this point, it's speculative.
At this point, totally speculative. Yeah.
Sure. What would be the last words that you would like to share with our audience? I really appreciate, by the way, the mention you made of and the importance you gave to the idea of creating a sustainable planet for ourselves.
That is the most important thing.
That is,
And we can do it. We have all the capabilities as we bring our understanding, our creativity, expand our knowledge base, and understand we don't have to consume ourselves to death here, which is what we're doing in this particular structure, economic structure that we're living in. And it goes back in Western civilization to the Cartesian duality, when we separated body and mind and power and morality. They're two different camps.
Indeed.
We've got to get it together again.
Fusion. Hot, cold, doesn't matter. Just start fusing.
That's right.
Right. Well, I want to thank you very much, Edgar, for being on the show.
You're welcome.
Really been a pleasure to have you. And I also want to thank you as well for your incredibly courageous pioneering work as an astronaut, and not only doing that piece of it, but also having the extra added gusto to take on the inner life, the inner consciousness.
That's the important thing.
And that's the real important one. And that exploration, that you had the courage in the face of tremendous opposition and many doubting Toms to take that piece of it on.
Fortunately, 25 years has said we've been in the right direction.
You got it, definitely. So, please, if you have any interest in what we've been discussing, do pick this up. It's been a pleasure for you to join us again today. My name is Mitchell J. Rabin. Thanks so much for joining us here at A Better World. We look forward to seeing you all next week.